Okay, welcome again. I'm Kevin, and I'm so excited to talk about today's episode because it's been something of you'll hear a lifelong thing for me. And today we're going to talk about problems. One of the things that I see all the time is that certainly we all have a lot of problems in our lives. There's always something. Um, Divorce brings problems at a pace and to a degree that are a lot of times overwhelming, confusing. It just leave people really struggling to deal with them. So, for me, I had a really big thing that happened years ago, back just after I graduated from college. And, I had been working, I went to school for engineering, and I really struggled with just sort of how much work there always was. Like, I worked really hard in college, I got a good degree. It was not easy. And then I got out and I started working. And, it felt like there was just no end to the stress, the problems that kept coming up. It was like my job was just constantly trying to fix things and deal with things that were a lot of times out of my control. And it just got overwhelming and I just got tired of it. I thought, this is not what I want my life to look like. I don't want to be so just living my life every day solving problems. So what I did was I saved up my money and I bought an RV. And a few years after I got out of college, I quit my job and I went traveling around the country because I was just so tired of dealing with problems. And I wanted to figure out, what do I want to do with my life? What's the meaning of life? And so at first, I spent a lot of time really focusing on that. What's the meaning of life? In fact, one of my favorite books that I read was on that trip, which is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Um, and amazing book, but there were so many things that I just spent time on, essentially studying and learning about and thinking about, that I never had the chance to um, spend time on before. Things like nutrition, my own nutrition, or my spirituality, or just exploring and learning about different locations and cultures and things like that. So I just did a lot of reading and spending time with myself. Um, and actually, after I planned to go for a year, and after 3 months, I just decided, it's same city or different city, but same look, same, people are very similar. And I kind of got tired of the traveling. And so I eventually came back and went back to my old job again. But I had a whole different take on solving problems because I realized on my trip, like, if I don't have problems, there really isn't anything to do. It certainly is nice sort of being on vacation for a long time. It's relaxing. There's a lot that feels good, but I wasn't really doing anything with my life. Like, the meaning was actually in dealing with some sort of a problem. So that was my own personal experience and quite an awakening for me. I recently heard a story talking about a guy a friend of mine actually, who got very wealthy. So he got a lot of money from his business, and um, he had said he'd worked so hard for so long in his life, and now all of a sudden he has all this money, and he thought that was kind of the end. And he said, I feel like I have as many problems as I did when I didn't have this money. So things like, what do you do with it? How do you keep it? Now what do I do with my time? Taxes, that, there's just different kinds of problems. So that was the thing that he realized, was there's still problems. They're just different. And certainly, money makes a world of difference. It's sometimes not a great example when you have none or you feel very stressed about it. But the reality is that, when we have, no matter what we're facing, there's to think that there is no problem, that there will, once we solve this problem, then we'll be happy, is a fallacy. It's a myth. There is no solution to just being done with problems. You can avoid them, you can hide from them, you can ignore them for a while, but eventually we all have things we have to deal with. So, given that, if there's always problems, then what? Well, there's lots of things to think about in that around this idea of there's always problems. So, one is the Buddhist philosophy is that life is suffering. This is the crux of it for them. If you're Buddhist, is that accepting that life is suffering. Yeah, there's always problems. There's always things that we have to deal with. So somehow the accepting of that there's always challenges um, gives us some freedom in and of itself. I see that a lot of times in divorce, people have really strong, difficult feelings. And it becomes one of those things that they don't want to deal with the feelings or the hurtful thoughts or self-worth or all these things because they just don't know what to do with them. So, what we find is that, part of the process is learning to what I would call lean into the problems. There isn't something that we try to, you just solve it, you fix it, and you're done. It's not the way it works, especially with all the things that come up emotionally around divorce. So the idea of trying to gently press into them. I'm gonna do what I can today, but I'm not trying to solve it all is certainly one thing. Now, the other thing I love this philosophy though as well, is this idea of the obstacle is the way. So the problems that we have, those things that we face on, I can't stop crying. Of course, we all want some sort of a solution to that, right? But somehow looking at it as that is something to deal with rather than ignore or avoid or hope it will go away, that's really where the solution is. And when you can look at problems that you have in your life as in a different way, in a positive way of like, this is just something to work through and I will get past this, it elevates you to a level of feeling like this is not going to break me. This is not going to be a thing. It's hard, that's for sure, but it's not the end. So I think I talk about that in another episode, but this is something to think about is just the obstacle is the way. This is the thing to deal with. Why? Because that's where life is. Now, one of the things also that we see is, in divorce, there is just so many things. I mentioned this before, so many things that happen so quickly. And so the one thing that we find is you can't do it all. You just can't. There are just too many things going on. And so don't try and do it all. Do one thing and try to deal with that, and then do the next thing and make some progress there, and then do the next thing and work on that. But trying to do it all can be overwhelming in so many ways. By the way, if you're watching now, please hit the subscribe, the like button, and then hit the bell to be notified of new videos. It's so helpful to know that people are interested, they find these videos valuable. And so please, if you're watching this now, please subscribe and let me know that this matters to you. Um, so the other thing that I want to talk about in terms of the problems we face is that one of the things that we see is as people go through divorce is that in a lot of ways we've been living in some sort of a zone that is somewhat safe and we're used to it, and that's the way it should be. It's when you're with somebody else, there's a certain degree of safety, of consistency that happens. But divorce blows everything up. And in some ways, people have said, I didn't know I could be this angry, or I didn't know I could be so sad about my marriage. And so, what it does is sometimes what this process of breaking through these problems of the obstacle is the way is that we find the edges of what happened. So, for example, um, just a little personal story here was that when years ago, I cut my finger really bad, and I sliced it open with a airplane model airplane, and the propeller was spinning, and I actually got my finger caught in it. And so it bled like crazy. Now, and that was when I was like 16. Now, just a few years ago, I broke my hand. So, in some ways, you could say, well, it seems like the cut isn't as bad as the broken hand. And I broke the metatarsal right here, the tarsal bone in my hand, and I couldn't grip anything, but I didn't know it was broken. So I kept trying to use it. And whenever I would do something in the wrong way, it would hurt like crazy, but then it would kind of go away. It turns out that the cut finger was far more painful than the broken hand. Um, and I was thinking about that, what happened was when I cut the finger, I sliced through and I hit nerves and I did all these things, but I had to sit in the hospital for about 4 hours before they would give me any pain medication. And it felt like my entire arm was on fire. It hurt so bad and it was so painful. And what I learned from that was, for me, going through life after that was I would get hurt and I felt like, you know what, that hurts, but it was nothing like what hurt when I cut my finger. I found the edge, I found the extreme of my own pain. Now, I'm sure there's things that are far more painful than what I experienced. But for me, I found an extreme that I had never experienced before. So I see the same thing with people going through grief, for example, that we are so sad and it takes a lot to deal with that grief. And to some degree, um, it's hard to really appreciate how deep that grief is until you're in it. And it's a little bit like when you're going into this process of dealing with the grief. I liken it to maybe swimming in the ocean where you feel like you're being pushed around all the time and you just don't know where the bottom is of the ocean. Like you're just getting washed over. And so when you actually start to deal with that grief, you find the extreme, the edge of your own grief. And one person told me that this same analogy that they said I did feel like I was in the ocean and I couldn't get my feet under me. But when I finally did the work, I realized that I could stand up where I was. I found the ocean floor and realized all I needed to do was put my feet down. And then just from that of dealing with it and approaching it, I was able to actually stand up and feel like I I know where I am now. And I feel like I can deal with this in a different way than I ever have before. So so another thing that I found, and I was thinking about this, I do a spin class on uh, twice a week. And I did this after, when I went through my divorce, I I really stopped taking care of myself. Like everything just got put on hold. It was just survive. My health was one of the last things on the list. And so after the divorce, after I went through the rebuilders class, even still, it was still about trying to sort of get my life in order. And I just had other priorities at the time. And I finally got around to realizing I need to take care of my health in a new way. And so I started this spin class and I love it. I love it. 2 times a week, I go in and I show up and I don't have to think about anything really. I don't have to worry about the timing, what to do, when to do it. There's a guy that teaches the class and he helps me push myself in a way that is sort of the minimum amount of effort. And I think I like going to the class because um, you know, I'm there. Once I get myself there, I don't have to think about it. I'm just like I might as well just push myself to do it. The other thing I really like is that once I'm there, it's so nice to be with others in a room, all working towards the same goal. It's just so motivating. I see other people working hard, and I think, well, I can do that. And so. I work hard myself, and somehow an hour later I walk out and I feel good, and then the rest of my day feels like I did something with it. So I say this because I was thinking about it and I thought, you know, that's the same thing that we see in our classes. So people in our classes are guided by the group facilitators. And, I see that, people come in and everybody has different problems that they face and to different degrees. Um, but when you work together towards the same goal, you, you see the humanity in each other, and you see that the effects of divorce, all these problems that came up for you, are not unique to you in a lot of ways. Grief, anger, self-esteem, the constant thinking about what happened and why and your ex, and being affected by, say, your ex being in a new relationship, or just how they could treat you. There's so many things that happen, um, but you start to see how everybody has this, and it's so helpful to process this in a way and deal with these problems in a way with others. Um, and that humanity helps in terms of also giving you the support and the strength to say, okay, everybody's confronting this, and I thought I couldn't do it on my own. And as a group, you can help guide each other and push each other and support each other in a gentle way, not like a forcing thing. And so I just see how great it is that it makes the process easier. It makes it more manageable. There's a common goal that people all are working towards. And it's just a fascinating experience to see people confront and deal with some of their biggest problems. And I don't think that there's that many things in life where you can have such a common, deep-seated issue that you're all working towards. I mean, there certainly are things in life that are like this, but it's a rare occurrence to be able to be with other people all working in such an intense way for such a profound reason to coming out that. And once they do, I see that how cool it is that people come out the other side feeling like they have pushed the boundaries of themselves in a way that they never thought possible. They never thought that they could be so happy. And why? Because they've learned, they found these edges of where they are, and the grief and the anger and the all those things, and now there's some sort of a parameter that they can start from that says, this is, I have so many more things and tools that I can use to process life. So it's a really cool experience. If this is something that you um, are, maybe you're already in the program, but also if you aren't, I highly recommend that you go to rebuilders.net and check it out, and look for the workshop, because that is the process that works for so many people in so many ways. And I just love seeing the results of that. We have a number of people who just finished, and the transformation of those people is off the charts. Um, we had just the other night we had a support group, and there was some people talking about, just in the matter of the first few weeks, of how much progress they've made on these problems that they've been struggling with for so long and so intensely. So um, anyway, very cool process. Whatever you do, I hope this is helpful. Thinking about problems and looking at them in a different way, to know that, hey, we all are dealing with these, and that's easy to say, but there is something to looking at the problems as an opportunity. And, divorce is, there is no bigger, quote, opportunity than when you're deeply affected by the loss of someone you love. So, anyway, I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments. Please take care, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.